Cincinnati Bengals return to practice on Sunday, and more often than not, it was a good day for the defense. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco, and to my right, your left, is James Rapien, also host of the Locked On Bengals podcast, coming to you from Paycor Stadium after another Cincinnati Bengals training camp practice. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals, covering your team every day. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere you get your podcasts. And if you're new, you can subscribe to join all the everydayers out there and everyone out there who makes us their first listen. Shout out to all the regulars. And James, today, a day that there was some success for the offense. And when I say the defense won the day, that doesn't mean that nothing went well for the offense. But by and large, overall, I would say the defense probably won today.
They did, and I think a lot of our listeners are going to be pleasantly surprised to hear that. At least the social media reaction has certainly been, oh man, this defensive back or that defensive back or this defense just isn't getting enough stops. And they got plenty of stops today. And the highlight, I would say, the main highlight of a player that we're all interested in, the impact he can make, is Geno Stone. Hasn't had a lot of opportunities, but when they were playing the move the ball drill, the Bengals offense, Joe Burrow leads them down for an opening drive touchdown, puts pressure on the defense, and on the final play of the drive on the following first team in the move the ball drill, when the first team was back on the field, it looked like Andrei Iosivas might score, and it looked like it was going to be 2 for 2. Joe Burrow finds him wide open, throws it to Andrei Iosivas, and Geno Stone comes out of nowhere to knock the ball away. And that's where the defense started to win, and the momentum definitely shifted from a first team standpoint. We can get to the second team in a bit as well, but Geno Stone, obviously, was the Bengals, one of their prized free agent signings, the first guy they came to terms with back in March, making his impact felt, making his presence felt.
And that's 2 practices in a row, which is notable as well, where he's had pass breakups on deep balls. And there hasn't been a ton of opportunity for Geno Stone. That's the nature of playing safety. But on this particular play, it looks like a hole shot into something that looked like a cover 2 kind of hole, where there was a corner underneath and Geno Stone working over the top, and Geno Stone gets over the top to get the hand in and break the pass up intended for Iosivas. It was down near the goal line. Definitely could have been a touchdown. Not the greatest throw of all time, but a really nice play from Geno Stone to get over there and make that play. And we also saw a bit of a recurring theme. I think Joseph Ossai, again, working against the ones, and that was a question after our last episode, I think, when I mentioned Joseph Ossai having a nice practice on Friday. That was against the ones. That was working primarily against Orlando Brown, and I noticed at least one significant pressure for Ossai that might have been a sack again with the ones on Sunday. So you're hearing a little bit of a theme there, where Burrow is doing a good job of extending plays, getting outside of the pocket like he did on Friday, and finding some yards outside of the pocket, outside of structure. You're seeing some pressure from the depth players on this defensive line, and you're seeing an back and forth kind of battle, because it wasn't all bad for the offense. The first drive you mentioned, it was a beautiful throw, drops it in the bucket, does Joe Burrow to Trent Irwin right where we were standing.
Mm-hmm.
The video you posted ends up with me in it as you followed Trent Irwin on his path back to the field. That was a beautiful throw for Joe Burrow and a really nice drive for the offense that converted, I believe, a 4th down on their way to scoring a touchdown in the first move the ball period. So not all bad for the offense, but then Geno Stone with a pass breakup, and then a target intended for Tanner Hudson ended another one of those move the ball drills. So 1 for 3 for the offense in those, the first team offense in those on Sunday.
Yeah, you want to see that balance. And I do think early in camp, almost every year we talk about how the defense is ahead, and that hasn't happened this year. But today was a nice kind of reset for a defense that I think needed it. And, you know, we can get into the second team some, but from a first team offense where, yeah, you don't have Jamar, but man, you're just finding ways. And guys like Trent Irwin are stepping up. Andrei Iosivas the other day in the move the ball drill, catches the touchdown, where it was the hottest practice of the year. And it was hot today, but the other day was it felt hotter, certainly more humid. And the offense still found a way. And so for them to respond the way they did, I think that's noteworthy. And I think it's noteworthy that Joseph Osai is starting to make plays. You mentioned that would be huge with Cam Sample out. We don't know when he could potentially return. We haven't heard from Zach Taylor. He wasn't out there on Sunday. So that's the one. We have other notes and stuff to get to when it comes to injuries and who is in and who is out. But Cam Sample, did not see him on the practice field at all. It's not a shock when you see him go down and how serious it looked, but we still don't know the severity of his injury.
Yeah, and you were talking about the secondary and some of those players making plays earlier in the show. It's still a rotation. And I find that to be notable with the number ones. While we stay on the topic of the number ones, before we get to Daijahn Anthony making another play and kind of forcing us to talk about him a little bit more, as he's had a nice little run here recently in camp. Still rotating the corners with the number ones. And I think Anthony actually even is rotating in with the ones. So that is pertinent to our discussion about those number ones as well. But we're still seeing Josh Newton working in with the ones at corner. We're still seeing Dax and DJ rotating at times with those number ones. And so it's getting interesting to see how they're mixing and matching personnel. Some of this could be to do with how light they are on the defensive line right now. That could be adjusting or forcing the defense to play slightly different personnel groupings from time to time, maybe a little bit more 3 safety work where Anthony is getting on the field in those situations. But another day, as with our Friday practice recap, where we're seeing them continue to get looks at Josh Newton and starting to get more looks at Daijahn Anthony, with an increased level of competition for those guys, even though it happened to be Josh Newton in coverage when it was a perfect pass, honestly. I'm not sure how much Newton could have done on the touchdown to Trent Irwin.
I actually talked to Josh about this, and he praised Irwin because Irwin basically kept him shoulder to shoulder and then was just able to go and separate and use his body to essentially make Josh either go through him to try to get the ball, but he was the only one getting the ball. And it was a perfect ball, like you said, from Joe Burrow. And so it's one of those learning moments. And I think that's what's nice, whether it's Daijahn Anthony, Josh Newton, any of these other young defensive backs, and the Bengals have a bunch of them. You're facing a bunch of different wide receivers, guys with a ton of experience in Irwin, but he's much different than Jermaine Burton. He's much different than a Charlie Jones or Andre Yosevach. So you're facing a variety, obviously, than T. Higgins, facing a variety of different guys, and that's going to help him as he continues to develop.
And those guys that he's playing against, you're getting more of a rotation right now because Jamar Chase, as you mentioned, not practicing, but we're continuing to see, and I believe we previously noted this on the show, we're continuing to see Trent Irwin primarily working in the Jamar Chase role. When they're going through, install kind of work, you can see that seems to be the direction that's going with Yosevach, continuing to work with the ones, including in team drills, including in 11s, including in install, including in individual work. It seems like Yoshi is destined for more slot work this year. And today was notably working with the ones consistently in the move the ball drills, where Charlie Jones was working with the second team in those drills.
Up next, well, we got to get to Daijahn Anthony. We got to get to we have a lot coming up as well, including the latest on Trent Brown. You mentioned Jamar Chase. We have some injuries as well, but let's get to Daijahn Anthony and much, much more coming up next.
Today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and BetterHelp knows that sometimes we have to draw some boundaries and create some non-negotiables. Maybe you never skip leg day. Maybe you just never skip therapy day. And when your schedule is packed with kids' activities and big work projects, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it can be hard to make time for it. And when you feel like you have no time for your non-negotiables, like therapy, they're probably more important than ever. And BetterHelp knows that they can provide you with tools to help you make sure that those non-negotiables aren't slipping. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, BetterHelp makes it incredibly easy. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You can fill out a brief questionnaire to get started. You'll get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. You can make sure you never skip therapy day or leg day, whatever the priority is, with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get started. You'll get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
Daijahn Anthony. Get to know his name, Jake. He's made quite an impact, a couple of interceptions over the past couple of practices, one off of Joe Burrow and then one on Sunday against Jake Browning in team drills. Continues to make plays. The rookie is making an impact, and I know a lot of the veterans have taken notice. So
yeah, it's also something that Kelsey Conway talked to Jordan Kovacs about, and he specifically called out Daijahn Anthony for an impact early. So that, in addition to the fact that he's working in with the ones and some interesting sub packages at times and the move the ball drills and those 11-on-11 drills that we're talking about today, where you're simulating, the game like literally moving the ball down the field instead of resetting at the same spot between plays. It tells you that, like Josh Newton last week and we talked about on Friday, the coaching staff wants to see what's going on here with an elevated level of competition, and Daijahn Anthony drawing positive attention to himself in a number of ways makes the safety room really interesting, right? Where Tyson Anderson has a clear role, at least in our heads, coming into the training camp as a prominent special teamer. And was coming on in a big way in that role for this team last year. In addition to that, you've got Jordan Battle, who played a lot for this team last year. I think we were expecting to see perhaps a little bit more of a competition than we've seen. It has not really been much of a competition at all, even if we thought that Von Bell was ahead in the pecking order there. Haven't really seen that so far. So that backup rotation for safety gets very interesting. And you've also got the piece of Dax Hill, who would probably be an emergency safety, you would think, given the transition he's made to corner. But a lot of defensive backs with safety experience on this team or in the safety room that are competing for potentially limited spots.
No doubt. And Daijahn Anthony, comfortable in the nickel, comfortable guarding wide receivers in that area or in that arena too. It's not like he only played safety at Ole Miss. So he's got a comfort level there. You have what Tyson Anderson brings on special teams as he continues to work his way back from an ACL. The secondary is going to have to work itself out, and that's the fun. It's game week, by the way. So happy game week, everyone. But yeah, there's a good problem to have is having guys like Josh Newton and Daijahn Anthony force their way to get more snaps at this stage, and where the chips fall, they fall. But it's good to see. I would put both guys in that category. And it's funny, on social media, it's almost a disclaimer that we have to put out there. When Josh Newton gets beat or one of these corners gets beat, it doesn't mean they're always getting beat. Corners get beat sometimes, and that happens. That's a part of it. Just like wide receivers get beat and these corners get the best of them sometimes. And so Josh Newton has had his fair share of wins. Obviously, Daijahn Anthony, who we're talking about, he's had an impressive couple of weeks of camp so far.
It's much more noticeable when you see a touchdown clip get posted. You see who the DB in coverage was, and you probably don't see the clip where Joe Burrow pulls a ball down and is scrambling for 6-7 seconds and ends up throwing it out of bounds. You probably aren't seeing that posted on social media. Often when that happens, that's because the coverage unit is doing its job, and that has happened on more than one occasion since I've been here, which is only a handful of practices at this point. So you are seeing the mixed bag, and it's encouraging to see a sixth round safety, right? Daijahn Anthony making that pushing for that respect from the coaching staff and getting more involved. Other defensive takeaways that I noticed on Sunday, Chris Jenkins getting involved with some of the big defensive sets when they had 5 defensive linemen on the field.
7th round. 224 overall. Good job, Jake.
Not bad. Chris Jenkins was getting involved. He was getting some nose tackle reps with 5 defensive line. Look, Cedric Johnson, I believe, was also getting some work with the ones in a rotational fashion. But again, they're so limited, especially on the edge right now with Sheldon Rankins not practicing on Friday. Also on the interior. So some guys are getting pushed up into elevated roles a little bit in terms of where they're practicing. But good to see some of those rookies, some of those young players getting some work with the ones and rotating in there, as we've been waiting to see Chris Jenkins kind of stake that claim for more playing time. Predominantly he and McKinley Jackson, are still working with the second team. And McKinley Jackson still has a very powerful and quick first step that's been interesting to watch, as he can create some havoc with that first step up field. And both of those guys will need to continue to work and grow and evolve through the preseason, get some work in those preseason games to get ready, because they will be relied upon in some capacity in a rotational role, at least when the season rolls around.
And there's a clear theme, like with Rankins. Like, I think he's fine. He's probably a little nicked up. There are a lot of veterans like that. For example, today, Mike Gesicki didn't go in 11s, didn't participate. And doesn't mean he's injured. I think he's probably nursing a little something, but he's fine. I'm sure if they had a game tomorrow, he'd be able to play. But it's good, because what does it do? It leads to other guys getting reps. And especially at defensive tackle, like Jake mentioned, you want Chris Jenkins out there. You want to see him get reps. You want to see McKinley Jackson face as many different interior offensive linemen as he can, just to get used to life in the NFL. And so there is a positive that comes with that. But I'm trying to think, we have some veterans to get to, but just along the Mike Gesicki lines here is Eric All participating in 11-on-11. First time since being cleared from his knee injury. I chatted with him in the locker room afterwards. He said he made a few mistakes that he's going to have to clean up, but was excited to be back out there. Wasn't sure how they were going to take it after he was cleared. Obviously, the Bengals trend in the nice and easy. They take it slow with guys coming back from injury, but Eric All was out there and he's been impressive. I really like what I've seen from Eric All. Wouldn't be shocked at this point, Jake, if we see him against the Buccaneers, which is I'm far from guaranteed, but if he's already doing 11-on-11s now, could he get some reps in a preseason game? I wouldn't be shocked if he's out there.
I would be surprised based on what Zach Taylor said. When Zach Taylor first talked about Eric Hall being cleared and the fact that they were going to ease him back in, and then he either was immediately in 7-on-7 work or snuck into 7-on-7 work and then got into 11-on-11 work today and had a couple of first down catches, I believe. One of them, I think, was on a little screen action, if I recall correctly, and the other one was just a normal getting out into the field and making a catch downfield. Didn't see exactly what the route was on that one, but I did notice that it was a first down, and that was with the second team, as Tanner Hudson and Drew Sample were the tight ends, and a little bit more than I'm used to seeing 12 personnel, seeing those two out there with the first team. As James mentioned, Gesicki wasn't going in 11s today, but encouraging certainly to see Eric All. And you really think he's a shot to play in that preseason game, huh? I
do, yeah. And because you said it would surprise you based on what Zach said. Everything Zach said has been wrong.
Yeah, well, I've been surprised this week is what I was trying to the point I was trying to make there. Like, I was surprised to see him in 11s today. It was a good step for him.
No doubt. I mean, because Zach said that, and wrong is the wrong word to describe what Zach said, but he said that he's in. And then I think the very next practice, either that day or the next day, he's getting hit in 7-on-7s and going to the ground making a play. And then today, 11-on-11s, multiple catches. I asked him about that after practice, and he was like, oh, I can't remember how many catches I had. I remember two, but I who knows? But he couldn't remember exactly. Did break down the screenplay for me. No, Eric All moving in the right direction. Excited to see him, and I would be surprised if we don't see him. If it's not against the Bucs, we'll probably see him against the Bears. Will we see Trent Brown against the Buccaneers? The latest on Trent Brown, other veterans, and much, much more coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But the playoffs and really NBA down, Olympics winding down, sports, well, we're kind of in a little bit of downtime. I know that changes on Friday when the Bengals take the field here at Paycor Stadium against the Buccaneers. Saturday. Yeah, it is Saturday. That's right. I keep thinking Friday for some reason. That's the day Jake's leaving and I can celebrate. I'm just kidding. But today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. So there's something for everyone all summer long. And you look at FanDuel's Super Bowl odds right now, the Bengals are plus 1,500. That means the Chiefs, the 49ers, the Ravens, the Lions, the Eagles all have better odds. They're tied with the Bills and with the Texans. So maybe you think the Bengals are going to bring home the Lombardi this year. Get to FanDuel.com today and take advantage of all of their boosts and bonus all summer long. Again, that's FanDuel.com.
James, you mentioned some veteran injury updates that we should get to here, and Trent Brown certainly highlights those. The Bengals said that he cleared his physical. He is ready to practice, but he did not practice on Sunday. Amarius Mims still taking all those reps with the ones. Trent Brown was on the rehab field, as were several other veterans, as we've discussed, Sheldon Rankins and I believe Trey Hendrickson among them. But what's your feel on when we'll see Trent Brown?
I was shocked that he didn't practice today. I think he's going to practice tomorrow. Maybe this is the ease him back in, where it's like, all right, we got you cleared. You'll practice on Monday, off day Tuesday, so you don't have to practice then, and then maybe on, off, something like that. Will he play against the Buccaneers? I don't think the Bengals necessarily need him to play, or to me, they're comfortable with Amarius Mims getting as many reps as possible. And I think that's what we're seeing here is, all right, you know what Trent Brown is. He's a 10-year veteran. He's working his way into whether it's shape, health, all of the above that you want him to get to. Fine. Take your time. At the same time, Jake, he's got to win that job. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think is interesting now is not seeing him out here Sunday. If he had practiced today, I would have left the door open for him to play on Saturday against the Buccaneers. Now it feels kind of weird where it's like, all right, well, does he practice twice and then you put him out there in a game? I don't necessarily think so. So maybe they're comfortable with the plan for Trent, but he's working his way back. I do think he can be a really capable player. I know his Q rating is dropping down some because he hasn't participated yet. I think he can be a really good player for this team, but I do think he's going to have to win the job at some point because Amarius Mims has fared pretty well so far in camp.
Nice Q rating reference. I do think that
your Q rating dropping right now.
I disagree. I think that Amarius Mims getting additional reps is always a good thing. But to your point, James, if Trent Brown is going to make this a competition, and when the news broke, it was like, okay, that competition can start now. Mm-hmm. Well, you got to continue to wait and see when and if Trent Brown will get involved. I guess when, not if. It seems inevitable at this point now that he's been cleared. But you need him to actually go through what the offense is doing. He needs to get through walkthrough. Maybe that's what it was. They cleared him so he could go through walkthrough. Maybe he went through walkthrough today. We'll perhaps find out more from Zach Taylor when we hear from him, and we will hear from him between now and that preseason game, certainly. But I would think he has to play in the preseason at some point, unless it's so clear in practices that he's just ready to go. He's mentally where he needs to be. Not that he can't be, but I think he does need to show it. You can't just assume that will be the case. And so it will be interesting to see when and if he gets involved. I keep saying when he gets involved, and hopefully that's sooner than later, because Amarius Mims continues to be impressive. I continue to think that the rookie is capable, and I don't know. I wonder what they want to happen there. I wonder if they want to let Amarius Mims start the season as a backup and let him continue to grow and not rush him into anything as a rookie, or if the preference is that he's just ready to go and hits the ground running. Because the longer he's in there with the ones and getting comfortable with the offense and continues to have, in my opinion, solid individual performances in practice where he looks like he belongs and looks like a high-end, athletically talented right tackle that can play in the NFL. Well, when does that decision kind of make itself for these coaches? Not yet, but at some point, especially if Trent Brown takes his time to get back to practice, that could get closer and closer.
I'll tell you what their preference is. The preference is the 18th overall pick wins that job. Because how great would that be?
But what's he have to do to get there without having seen Trent Brown?
No, exactly. And so that's one, go out there against the Buccaneers and show everyone what we've seen in camp so far. Even though you're going up again, you're not dealing with Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard. That's a very real thing. I wish he was dealing with Sam more, because Sam's a veteran and plays with that edge and that motor and everything that he's going to see on game day. And the same thing, obviously, with Trey, one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. So we will see with Amarius, and I would bet that he would start on Saturday night against the Buccaneers. We'll see there, but it's a unique competition right now. Because I think Trent Brown was in the pole position, and maybe he still is, and that's why everything's moving slow. Or maybe Amarius has taken the lead because we haven't seen Trent. And at some point 77 has to get out there. I'm sure he knows it. I'm sure the coaching staff knows it. You can't, this isn't a La'el Collins situation where you don't have anyone behind him that you trust. Amarius Mims is building that trust. And to your, if I'm Trent, at some point I got to get on the field and show that, hey, I'm still RT1. And he very well might do that. He's been in the league a long time. He's a really quality player. I think he's a really good fit for this offense. And so you just got to see him do it. Do you have to see him do it for the next month? Probably not, but it would be good to see him do it soon. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see him practice Monday.
It would be great to see him get out there. It would be great to see when Sam Hubbard is able to return to practice. Zach Taylor called him week to week the last time we heard from him. We'll hear from Zach Taylor again soon, perhaps get an update on some of these veterans that have been missing some time. It was also great to see Jermaine Burton return to practice. I don't know that we've mentioned that yet. That was obviously something that our Locked On Bengals insider got a text about that, I believe. I sent that out after practice. And if you're following on social media, of course, you got that update. But on the topic of the offensive line, since we spent so much time on that right tackle battle, just wanted to quickly mention the depth battles there that I think will continue to be interesting. Cody Ford very clearly remains a favorite for one of those backup roles and will be one of the first offensive linemen off the bench behind, I think, whichever of Trent Brown or Amarius Mims is coming off the bench at tackle. Although I would say that Amarius Mims is only repping at right tackle. So that could be interesting if it is a left tackle substitution that is required at some point, even though we know Orlando Brown has been an Iron Man throughout his NFL career. Beyond that, the very interesting name, draft pick that we were very high on, and Matt Lee, has not been in with the second team yet in these move the ball periods, which are the more intense periods that we've seen back on Thursday. And again, today, it's been Trey Hill in that center role. They've seen a couple of different guys at right tackle. It's not just been Jackson Carman, although it has also been Jackson Carman. They've been rotating there, and we've seen Trey Hill at center, Cody Ford at a guard position. He's also gotten some work at tackle in this training camp. So those backup battles along the offensive line, I think that's going to take a couple of weeks. I think we're going to need to see them get through some preseason games, see how they react in a live football environment. Then we might see those rotations change in practice after preseason game one. We'll see how that develops. We'll see how the next week develops there. But just a little update there on Matt Lee, who I am anxiously awaiting to see when he can get in with the second team a little bit in some of the 11-on-11 work.
For sure. And hopefully we see a lot of these guys. If we're not seeing them in 11-on-11, hopefully we see them on Saturday. It's game week. It just set in for me. It's game week. I'm thinking already. I'm like, oh man, preseason game week. It's exciting. And hopefully some of these rookies that we've been sharing observations about deliver and continue to excel and play at a high level.
Yeah, you mentioned it was game week earlier in the show, and it kind of set in for me too. Mm-hmm. We're less than a week away from and a more exciting game week, I think, because the starters are playing for the second time technically in Joe Burrow's tenure with the Cincinnati Bengals. And we'll maybe get some more information about which starters are playing and what the plan is. We'll see what Zach Taylor wants to divulge. We'll have those updates hopefully for you tomorrow here on Locked On Bengals. And until then, that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.